The burger business is a lie. When most people think of McDonald's, they imagine burgers, fries, and milkshakes, a fast food company that sells billions of cheap meals every year. But the truth is far stranger. The Golden Arches aren't really a restaurant empire. They're the front door to one of the largest real estate operations on the planet. See, the company that sells you a $2 cheeseburger is actually making its real money from something else entirely: land, buildings, rent, and a business strategy so clever that it quietly turned a simple burger stand into a global property empire worth hundreds of billions. To understand how that happened, we have to go back to a small burger stand in California. In 1940, two brothers named Richard McDonald and Maurice McDonald opened a small restaurant in San Bernardino. At first, it looked like a typical American drive-in. Car hops ran food to parked cars, the menu had dozens of items, and service was slow. Like many restaurants of the time, they were simply trying to keep customers happy and make enough money to survive. But after a few years, the brothers noticed something strange in their sales numbers. Nearly all of their profits came from just three things: burgers, fries, and drinks. So they made a radical decision. They shut down the restaurant completely. When the restaurant reopened in 1948, it was almost unrecognizable. The menu had been cut down to only a handful of items. Car hops were gone. Customers now walked up to a counter and picked up their food themselves. Inside the kitchen, everything had been redesigned to work like a factory assembly line. One worker grilled patties, another added toppings. Someone else wrapped the burgers. Fries were cooked in large batches. Every movement was optimized for speed. The system was called the Speedy Service System, and it changed everything. Food that used to take 30 minutes could now be served in seconds. Prices were lower, service was faster, and the restaurant suddenly started selling huge amounts of food. Customers loved it. Soon, the small San Bernardino location was selling thousands of burgers every single day. The McDonald brothers began licensing their system to a few other operators, but they were careful about expansion. They preferred staying small and keeping control. Then, in 1954, something unexpected happened. A milkshake machine salesman named Ray Kroc noticed that one small restaurant in California was ordering an unusual number of mixers. Most restaurants only needed one machine. This place had ordered 8. Curious, Kroc traveled to San Bernardino to see the restaurant himself. What he saw amazed him. The parking lot was packed. Customers lined up outside the building. Burgers flew out of the kitchen at incredible speed, and the entire operation ran with military-like efficiency. Kroc immediately realized something the McDonald brothers hadn't fully embraced. This wasn't just a successful restaurant, it was a system that could spread across the entire country. Kroc approached the brothers with an idea. He wanted to franchise the concept nationwide. They agreed to let him handle expansion, and in 1955, he opened the first franchised McDonald's under his company in Des Plaines, Illinois. Expansion began quickly. New restaurants opened across the United States. The Golden Arches started appearing in city after city. But there was a problem. Despite opening more locations, Kroc's company wasn't making much money. Franchise owners paid only a small percentage of their sales back to the company. After expenses, the profits were surprisingly thin. Meanwhile, the franchise operators who actually ran the restaurants were often doing quite well. Kroc realized something had to change. The breakthrough came from a financial advisor named Harry J. Sonnenborn. During a meeting in the late 1950s, Sonnenborn explained an idea that would completely transform the business. "You're not in the hamburger business," he told Kroc. "You're in the real estate business." At first, it sounded strange. After all, McDonald's sold burgers. That was the entire point. But Sonnenborn's strategy was brilliant. Instead of letting franchise owners buy their own land and buildings, McDonald's would buy the property itself. The company would purchase prime locations where restaurants would be built. Then they would lease that land to franchise operators. In other words, McDonald's would become the landlord. Franchise owners would still operate the restaurants. They would hire employees, manage daily operations, and invest their own money into the business. But every month they would pay rent to McDonald's. Suddenly, the company wasn't just collecting small royalty payments, it was collecting rent from thousands of locations. And most importantly, it owned the land. This changed the power dynamic completely. If a franchise failed, McDonald's still owned the property. If a franchise succeeded, McDonald's made even more money through rent tied to sales. And as new restaurants opened across the country, the company quietly accumulated something incredibly valuable: prime commercial real estate. Highway exits, busy city intersections, shopping districts, places where millions of people pass every day. Over time, those properties increased dramatically in value. Some McDonald's locations sit on land that has become incredibly valuable simply because cities expanded around them. What was once cheap roadside land can now be worth millions. This gives the company a level of financial stability most restaurant chains could never achieve. Restaurants can fail, trends can change, new competitors can appear overnight, but prime real estate almost always holds its value. That's why the McDonald's business model is so powerful. The restaurants generate daily cash flow from food sales. The real estate builds long-term wealth. It's a combination that transformed a simple burger stand into one of the most powerful business empires in history. Today, McDonald's generates tens of billions of dollars in revenue every year. A large portion of its profit comes from franchise fees and rent rather than directly selling food. In other words, the golden arches are less like a restaurant logo and more like a landlord's sign. Of course, the food still matters. If customers stop coming, franchise owners struggle and the system weakens. That's why McDonald's constantly updates its menu, invests in technology, and spends billions on marketing. But behind the scenes, the real engine of the business is still the same idea that Harry Sonnenborn explained decades ago. Sell burgers, own the land, collect the rent. It's one of the most brilliant corporate strategies ever created. And it explains why McDonald's became so powerful so quickly. Because while the world thought it was watching the rise of a fast food chain, something else was happening quietly in the background. A global real estate empire was being built, one cheeseburger at a time. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the business strategies behind the world's biggest companies, make sure to subscribe to Capital Theory for more stories about the hidden strategies that built billion-dollar empires.